interrupt this program for a breaking news alert from the local station.
Good afternoon, everyone. The breaking news is downtown. In just a moment, we'll hear from Governor Scott and Mayor Curry. They've just been briefed on Hurricane Irma. You're looking live at the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center downtown. You can see Sheriff Williams is also there. The governor is waiting for everybody to get into place. This is the third city that he has visited so far today. He was in Hialeah this morning, and then he was in West Palm. Let's listen in.
Good afternoon. I just had a briefing with Jacksonville emergency management officials. A storm surge watch is in effect for Jupiter Inlet southward around the Florida Peninsula to Bonita Beach and the Florida Keys. The storm surge is forecast to be 5 to 10 feet, which is life-threatening. Rainfall is forecast to be 8 to 12 inches, with isolated rain receiving up to 20 inches of rain in places. A hurricane watch is in effect for Jupiter Inlet southward around the Florida Peninsula to Bonita Beach, the Florida Keys, Lake Okeechobee, and Florida Bay. Right now, the National Hurricane Center is reporting that Hurricane Irma remains a dangerous and life-threatening Category 5 storm with winds of 175 miles per hour. Based on what we know now, Florida will have major hurricane impacts with deadly storm surge and life-threatening winds. And we can expect this all along the eastern coast of Florida. The Florida Keys should be prepared to start feeling the effects of this storm as early as tomorrow night. Look at the size of this storm. It is wider than our entire state and could cause major life-threatening impacts from coast to coast. Regardless of which coast you live on, be prepared to evacuate. Floridians on the West Coast cannot be complacent. Just because models show it going along the East Coast, the West Coast will still have hurricane conditions. Remember, Hurricane Andrew is one of the worst storms in the history of our state. This is much worse and more devastating on its current path. Irma has already caused multiple fatalities. This storm is powerful and deadly. We're being very aggressive in our preparation for this storm, and every Floridian should take this seriously and be aggressive to protect their family. Possessions can be replaced, your family cannot. This is serious, and we can't take chances. It is life-threatening. This is not a storm you can sit and wait through. One of our top priorities right now is fuel availability. We know there are problems with supply at gas stations and are working around the clock to get fuel to you. Last night I spoke with all the fuel retailers. This morning I spoke with the oil companies, and early today I spoke with fuel suppliers. I've been very clear to all of these groups. I have to know exactly what they need so we can work together to get fuel to families as fast as possible. The issues as of now include fuel availability from some of our ports, federal rules and regulations, and getting fuel through traffic to gas stations. To address these concerns, we're doing the following. I've talked to FEMA, the Department of Energy, EPA, the Department of Transportation, and the White House about waiving federal rules and regulations to get as much fuel possible into our state and through our ports. I have directed state law enforcement to provide escort services to gas trucks to get them through traffic so they can get to the stations faster. These state law enforcement escorts are happening right now.
I don't know where you are.
For gas stations and evacuation zones, we need you to stay open as long as possible so people can get out. We will arrange police escorts for your employees so they can get out safely. We need your gas stations to stay open as long as you can. My staff is reaching out to gas stations in the Keys to help provide contact, to help coordinate law enforcement, escorts for staff, and tankers. We know fuel is important, and we are absolutely devoting every state resource to addressing this. 3 tanker ships are delivering fuel to Port Tampa today for resupply efforts, each delivering 1.2 million gallons of fuel. State law enforcement continues to escort fuel supply trucks from Port of Tampa and Port Everglades. While we are making progress, you will see lines or outages, unfortunately. I know this has to be very frustrating, and we will not stop working on this. If you are concerned that you do not have a way to evacuate because of a fuel issue, please call your local emergency management hotline or the Florida Emergency Information Hotline at 1-800-342-3557, which is a dedicated emergency management hotline. We will get you out. But you have to call now if you're in an evacuation zone. We cannot save you when the storm hits. We cannot save, just remember this. If you, once there's an evacuation order, get out. We can't take care of you in the middle of a storm. If you know you're going to a shelter in your county, please take only how much fuel you need. You don't need to fill your tank to the brim if you're going to stay in your county. I've said this many times. Please only take what you need. Be considerate of others. The GoBuddy app is a great resource to find open stations with fuel. The GoBuddy app. Yesterday, I asked the governors of Alabama, South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina to rescind weight and driver regulations so out-of-state resources could move expeditiously into Florida. All of these states worked quickly to respond to our request. The EPA has approved an emergency fuel waiver request from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, which will allow more fuel to quickly enter the state. All ports still remain open and operating to bring fuel and supplies in. We are laser focused on how we get as much fuel as possible to ports while they are open. The Florida Keys. I've offered school buses for transportation needs in Monroe, Miami-Dade, and Broward counties. At this time, Miami-Dade is using these services to help evacuate those with special needs, and Broward has buses on standby. Monroe has said they do not need these buses right now because they're using city buses, but my offer still stands. Right now, there are mandatory evacuation orders in effect for the Florida Keys. This means all residents and visitors leave the Keys. We estimate that about 31,000 people had already evacuated from the Keys as of 6 p.m. last night. If you're in the Keys and still home, leave and get out. We can't save you once the storm hits. The entire Lower Keys Hospital has already been evacuated. All other hospitals in the Keys will be evacuated today. I've been very clear with Monroe County that the state will provide whatever resources are necessary to get the hospitals back open quickly following the storm. We also have a task force devoted entirely to helping prepare and respond to the Keys. Their issues are somewhat different because they have all those bridges down there. For the remainder of the state waiting on evacuation orders, listen to your local officials. They will tell you if and when your area needs to be evacuated. If you're told to evacuate, get out quickly. The roads will fill up quickly as you need to go. We can expect additional evacuations as the storm continues north through our state. In Broward County, there are voluntary evacuations ordered for mobile homes and low-lying areas, and mandatory evacuations ordered for east of Federal Highway, including Barrier Islands. In Miami-Dade County, there are mandatory evacuations ordered for Barrier Islands, Bal Harbor, Bay Harbor Islands, Golden Beach, Indian Creek Village, Miami Beach, North Bay Village, Sunny Isles Beach, and Surfside. In Monroe County, there are mandatory evacuations for all residents and visitors. If you live in any of these evacuation zones and you're still at home, leave. In Collier County, there are voluntary evacuations ordered from Marco Island. In Hendry County, there are voluntary evacuations ordered for low-lying areas, non-slab built homes, mobile homes, and RVs. I cannot stress this enough. Do not ignore evacuation orders. Remember, you can rebuild your home, you can buy your possessions again. We can't rebuild your life, and we can't recreate your family. Regardless of which coast you live on, be prepared to evacuate. The storm can move and change on a moment's notice. Floridians on the West Coast cannot be complacent, and those in coastal areas should be prepared to leave. Traffic. Many of you I know are already stuck in traffic. I know it has to be frustrating, but please be patient. Evacuations are not meant to be convenient. They're meant to keep you safe. We're trying to do these evacuations as safely as possible. We have increased the number of troopers on Florida highways to help move traffic and keep people going down the road. Real-time traffic information and evacuation routes is available at fl511.com. We have traffic cameras on every major highway in Florida, and we're clearing traffic issues in real time so we can keep people moving. FDOT and law enforcement are working diligently. We're already seeing bottlenecks at major highway junctions, which brings up an important point. You do not need to evacuate out of the state or hundreds of miles away to be safe. Find shelters in your county. We are coordinating with Google's emergency response team to prepare to close roads in Google Maps in real time in the event that Hurricane Irma forces the closure of any roads in the aftermath of the storm. In my direction, all tolls have been waived across Florida roadways. This should help families evacuate quickly and safely. Again, if you're concerned you don't have a way to evacuate due to traffic, call the Florida Emergency Hotline, 1-800-342-3557. It's a dedicated hotline. National Guard. Today I'm activating another 3,000 National Guard members to help with shelter operations and evacuations. Today we'll have more than 4,000 Florida National Guard members activated to immediately begin assisting with ongoing Hurricane Irma preparation. Tomorrow, every available member of the National Guard, 7,000, will be deployed around the state. 13 helicopters and more than 1,000 tactical high water vehicles are on standby ready to be deployed. By using resources from other states, we also have 30,000 troops, 4,000 trucks, 100 helicopters, and air evacuation crews ready to support our state. I've talked to President Trump multiple times, and he has assured me that Florida will get all the help from the federal government that we need. So far, we've requested disaster tarps, water, baby food supplies, supply trucks, search and rescue personnel, and equipment and incident management teams. Military watercraft and aircraft with the capability to move fuel from the mainland to the Keys at Marathon, and a military vessel like a Marine or Navy ship to sustain shuttle operations and complete ship-to-shore missions. This vessel will allow us to move crew, supply, and fuel to the mainland. I've also mentioned the major concerns with the Florida Keys to FEMA, including any potential destruction of bridges. If we lose a bridge, people are stranded. FEMA is looking at all options to assist the state with this. Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission. They're preparing search and rescue teams for potential deployment. They have more than 200 officers standing by for the first wave of response based on potential storm impacts. 30 teams with supporting resources such as trucks, coastal and riverboat patrols, ATV, and shallow draft boats are preparing for evacuation support, search and rescue missions, or any additional needs. FWC is also coordinating with partners in states such as Texas, Georgia, South Carolina, Missouri, Tennessee, Louisiana, and Arkansas in case additional officers or resources are needed. The Florida Highway Patrol is monitoring road and traffic conditions to assure roadways are clear. FGLE has established 18 emergency response teams for deployment to impacted areas and 7 logistics and planning teams. Utility providers. They're actively pre-positioning resources throughout the state and in neighboring states. We know from previous storms how incredibly important it is for the power to be restored quickly. Florida Power and Light and others have activated emergency response teams and have thousands of workers preparing to respond to Irma. They're also working with our utilities are also working with many of our out-of-state utilities and electrical contracting companies to secure additional resources. Shelters. If you're evacuating for the Keys, go to Florida International University. There's absolutely no reason for anyone not to evacuate if you're ordered to do so. Shelters will be available and you need to follow the directions of local officials and go to the shelter that fits your needs. If you need a hotel, visit Expedia.com/Florida. Expedia is working on hotel occupancy in real time. The Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association has encouraged all hotels to waive pet policies, offer shelter, and be compassionate with cancellations. Families can go to floridadisaster.org/info to learn where shelters are in your area. Comcast will be opening more than 137 free Xfinity Wi-Fi hotspots throughout the state for individuals in need, including non-Comcast customers. You can go to xfinity.com/Wi-Fi. AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile are also helping with these hotspots. The state is staging supplies such as meals, shelter support, trailers, and water resources at the State Logistics Resource Center in Central Florida for deployment as needed. We will be pre-positioning these goods to help everyone in the storm's path. Volunteers. We need volunteers. We've had more than 8,000 volunteers sign up in the last, 36 hours. This includes more than 1,300 state workers. This is great, but we still need more. We need a total of 17,000 volunteers statewide. If you want to volunteer, go to volunteerflorida.org to sign up, or you can call 1-800-FLHELP1. We need more volunteers. You make a big difference in people's lives. You can help with shelters, food distribution, and response efforts. Every Florida family must prepare to evacuate, regardless of the coast you live on. We are 100% focused on making sure every Floridian and all of our visitors have timely information on this storm, and we will continue to closely monitor Hurricane Irma and issue updates throughout the next few days. I cannot stress this enough. Get prepared now. Know your evacuation evacuation zone now. Listen to your local officials. This storm has the potential to catastrophically devastate our state, and you have to take this seriously. Even though the National Hurricane Center map has it in this cone and has going up the East Coast, it could move further west. It could also go east, but we all have to be ready. This is a catastrophic storm that our state hasn't seen. It's already killed a lot of people in the Caribbean. Don't think you can ride out this storm. Protecting life is our absolute top priority. No resource or expense will be spared to protect families. That means you need a plan now where you will go. Don't wait, figure it out. Cada familia tiene que tomar este huracán en serio. Tiene que tener un plan, 3 días de agua, alimentos y las medicinas que necesiten. Como gobernador, mi prioridad es que todos, turistas, familias en la Florida estén seguros y preparados.
Thank you, Governor. First, I want to say to the people of Jacksonville and the entire metropolitan area, this event is no different than any time we are facing a need or a crisis in advance. The governor and the agencies that he is the CEO of are available to us on the front end, both to me personally and to our entire team. So know that and feel good about that. Thank you, Governor. I encourage everybody to go to jaxready.com. This is what I've been preaching for days. There you can find your zone, you can determine what kits you need, and you can determine your plan. One of the things that we've heard buzzing around here in Jacksonville and the surrounding area is that this is another Matthew. We were with Scott with the National Weather Service just a few minutes ago, and he made it very clear. What we see right now, this is not another Matthew. And to be clear, Matthew inflicted serious damage on our city. He reminded us that Matthew debilitated and weakened as it approached the coast of Jacksonville. We can expect tropical storm winds by 8 a.m. Sunday and hurricane winds, if it stays on current patterns, by 8 a.m. Monday morning. The people of Jacksonville need to know that your city continues to prepare, and you still have time to prepare. I was out with our Public Works Department just this morning, observing and working with them on the things that they're doing to clear and ensure that in the aftermath of the storm, any flooding will clear out as quickly as possible. Shelters will be announced later today, including specific shelters for folks with special needs. I said yesterday, we talked about evacuations yesterday, zones A, B, mobile homes and low-lying areas, and asked people to leave. And I'm going to restate this. The data will be much clearer on our update tomorrow morning. If it stays on the current track, or if it gets worse than it is, there will be a mandatory evacuation tomorrow morning for A, B, mobile homes, low-lying areas. So, given the traffic issues that we discussed yesterday, if you have the ability and you're in those areas, I'm asking you to please leave now. And I'm asking you, the media, as you report that this is voluntary, also report that this is a serious voluntary ask. We don't have the data yet. We just have to move earlier than usual because of the traffic coming from South Florida, and now we have traffic potentially north of us with the state of emergency in Georgia and states above. Again, I just want to remind everybody that we've been through this. We're here as a community, neighbors, brothers, sisters, families. The governor and the state are with us, so be vigilant, be prepared, and we'll get through this. Thank you.
We'll take any questions. One of the big things different between this and Matthew is that is the storm surge. I mean, the projection is we could see significant storm surge. The storm surge can cover your house, and it's different than what happened with Harvey, because Harvey was a rain event. If on the projected path, it's going to come through our state relatively quickly, so it won't be it'll be a rain event, but nothing like Harvey. But the storm surge, I mean, we could have 5, 10 plus feet of storm surge. It can cover your house. So think about that if you're close to the coast, and listen when they talk about the evacuations, because that's my biggest concern right now is people are not taking seriously enough the risk of storm surge.
When you're talking evacuations, what do you want people to know? Should they leave the city, the county, go to Georgia? What do they need to do?
Sure, go north or west. I mean, they need to get out of Jacksonville. They need to get out of the path of the storm. Again, if they can. Jim, if they can't get out for any number of reasons, they'll know where the shelters are available. We'll be releasing that later today into this evening, and they can begin that process tomorrow.
Governor, I've got a question about fuel shortages. Obviously, you're getting fuel in here, and that's great. It's going into Tampa. Is it going all over the state? Are we seeing as much of it in the north part of the state as we are down south? I mean, what's the distribution?
Well, we're trying to get as much fuel in every place where that brings fuel in. We're getting it everywhere we can in the state. So, you know, it comes into Jacksonville, it comes into Tampa, it comes into Port Everglades. Now, you know, at some point, Port Everglades is going to close, right? If assume the path, it continues up this path. So right now, where we can get more fuel in is Tampa and in Jacksport.
Okay, and
AG, I want to add to that because the governor, we asked earlier, unlike many parts, the information that we have right now is not that we have a fuel shortage here, and we're confirming that, but that we have a distribution issue, and the governor's offered to help us with the distribution channels.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we started this morning. We provide law enforcement escort to the carriers that go from the depot, the fuel depot, to the gas stations and back, so they can accelerate that process. Because what's happening is that you know, people are buying so much gas right now. It's, you know, as soon as you fill it up at the retailer, they're buying all the gas before the truck can get back. And so we're trying to accelerate everything we can. And the other thing we're trying to do is get fuel in. I've asked for, I talked to the EPA, talked to Scott Pruitt today. They gave us an additional waiver, which allows us to get more gas in here. We're working on some additional waivers. I've been talking to the White House all day on that to help us get more fuel in here. So it's three things. We got to keep getting fuel in here. We've got to make sure we get it to the stores as quickly as we can. And then we're asking people to, you know, to buy wisely. I mean, if you don't need it, don't buy it, because somebody else might need it that has to go a further distance than you are. So we're doing all those things. I'm having calls. I had a call this morning with all the oil companies. Then I did all the carriers. Last night I did the stores, and I'll do all of them again later today. So what we're telling them is tell us your problem, and we'll see how we can solve it.
Governor Scott, in regard to traffic, obviously back during Hurricane Floyd, there was massive exodus, and there were people stuck on the highways for days, and they were going to change things after that. What has been changed? Because I know FDOT has said they're not going to do contra lanes anymore, and they mentioned using the shoulder use emergency evacuation plans. Is any of that going into effect?
So here's what we're doing. If you think we've spent a lot of money continuing to build the infrastructure in our state. Our state transportation budget is over $10 billion a year. So we're building a lot of roads. We're adding lanes all across this state. Now we want to do this safely. So we're following highway safety, FDOT. They're following all the bottlenecks, and you know the first thing they'll do is they'll add the shoulder lanes. All right, but right now we're not doing that yet. But that's the first thing we'll do. But we'll look at all of our different options. But highway safety and FDOT and the local law enforcement, everybody's going to do everything they can to move the traffic as fast as possible. But think about it. If you're going to evacuate, why would you wait until there'll be more traffic? Logically, there's going to be more traffic the closer we get to the storm because people are going to procrastinate. That's foolish. If you know, I mean, the mayor's told everybody the odds are what's going to get evacuated. So if you can evacuate, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you try to get out now and later rather than later?
They're already bottlenecks. Then why aren't they already opening up the?
If you look at right now, if you go around the state, the traffic is still moving. Now there'll be an accident at places, but the traffic is still moving. If there's an accident, that happens until they get it cleared up. Highway safety is clearing up the roads as fast as they can. The moment they believe it's safe to do the shoulder lanes, they'll do it. Highway safety is very focused on getting people where they want to go.
Mayor Lenny Curry, do you mind addressing a little bit about, I know last year with Hurricane Matthew, we talked about power outages being out for a long time with JEA. Days and then weeks for some people. What is the partnership that you have currently, or what have you talked about with JEA in regards to making sure the power gets on after tomorrow?
Well, let's be clear. In a major storm, there will be major power outages. I've spoken and worked with the JEA. They have mutual aid agreements with utility companies that are prepared to come in and man, and they're also prepared to go outside of those agreements and get help from other companies such as Florida Power and Light. So they have a plan and they're working the plan, and we'll work it aggressively. Understanding how important power is and recognizing that in the last storm, you know, if you're the last home to get your electricity back on, it's a very painful situation.
Here's what, just to kind of add to that. So we've already been having phone calls with the utilities, all right? If we saw this with Hermine, okay, that there was as many mutual aid agreements among all the different ones. That's changed. That's completely changed. It changed through Matthew. We already having calls. We already know who's bringing in how many crews. Now here's the only thing that was in the beginning was slowing down a little bit is 2 days ago you couldn't tell where that path was going to be. They're even looking at possibly up the even as far west as Louisiana. So as it becomes more certain, it's easier to get crews from outside the state to commit to come down. It looks like, as an example, Gulf Power, one of our 4 big utilities in the state. Now it doesn't look like it's going to hit any of their areas, so now they can release their crews to be able to help JEA or others. And my understanding is around the state, and I have already been on. We do daily phone calls with the utilities. They are already sharing information about where the needs are.
Last question.
Mr. Mayor, you had mentioned that Matthew had destroyed the infrastructure out at the beaches and dunes. A lot of mature dunes were wet. Are there any spots in particular that you're concerned about out there that maybe don't have mature dunes yet or don't have anything?
I mean, look, I think anytime a storm in this magnitude, of course, there's real concern. But I think the important thing is that the city worked very quickly with the federal government and the state to restore as quickly as possible, so we wouldn't basically be facing a storm with a naked coastline, if you will. I know some of the beaches mayors were talking about some of the things that they've done with some of their own funding to block some of the areas, so it's less likely that they experience what they experienced last storm. And I commend them for that.
Thanks, everybody.
Governor, where do you go from here?
Daytona.
Pardon me?
Daytona.
Okay.
Daytona Beach.
And then your next, really, your big address is going to be when, or when should we expect more information?
Well, as the information comes out, we keep putting it out. So, but I'll in the night in South Florida.
And Mayor, are you still going to City Council?
You've been listening live to Governor Scott and Mayor Curry briefing the public on Hurricane Irma, coming live from the Duval County Emergency Operations Center. To sum up just very briefly, Governor Scott and Mayor Curry are both saying pretty much the same thing. Irma is much more dangerous than Matthew was, and even much more dangerous than Hurricane Andrew back in 1992. Again, we'll have a brand new briefing from the National Hurricane Center at 5 o'clock when they release the new track. In the meantime, we'll have much more coverage coming up on News 4 Jackson 4 o'clock with Tarek Miner and Joy Purdy. We now return you to our regular programming.
Stay with the local station on TV, on the go, and online at news4jax.com for new developments on this breaking news alert.